Aloha and welcome to Inside the Writer's Studio. I'm your host, Eila Algood, and I'm excited today to bring to you Johnson Kahili. He'll be sharing a written work that he's just finished, and then we'll go to some talk story where we can learn a bit about his work as a writer. So please welcome Johnson.
Thank you, Eila. I'm going to read a story that I wrote specifically for this exercise. It's called The Ballad. Every Thursday, for as long as I can remember, I follow the same routine: a light breakfast and music with my friends. This audience is special. They are family. Several years ago, I was injured and spent months of convalescence here at Teddy Valley Extended Care. I must admit, it's a tough crowd. A musician would feel guilty playing careless anthems of youth in the face of such suffering. It is also an unspoken taboo to play Dust in the Wind within the halls of a medical facility. But like clockwork, I sing the tune anyway. I wag my head in disgust. "Excuse me, you're on my dime, pal." It's become part of the routine. My hour is nearly at an end, and that damn cowboy Donald Fry just can't wait for me to wrap up my set. He's one of those strong silent types. Without a single word, he has a gall to set up his rig while I'm still on stage. Well, folks, looks like I have time for just one more. I try my best to sound chipper. The small collection of agonized faces don't respond. Normally, I would feel heartbroken, but it's the same every week. Besides, I have an audience of at least one. Jenna Mae Crawford is here, and she always enjoys my set. She alone claps and cues me for an encore. It is clear that I should vacate the stage, but how can I deny those crystal blue eyes? I hoist my guitar up and let the rhythmic chime of strings draw out a lengthy ballad. It is one of my own making, and I often save it for last. 3 verses of gut-wrenching misery topped off with a cleverly constructed solo. Each wailing note speaks to my soul, and I let song whisk me away to a time when this was life. In my heyday, I traveled the coast and played for many fine crowds. You won't find my name among the rock and roll legends, but even a small fish like me can get by. If a musician is savvy, determined, and has a faint lick of skill, the lifestyle is possible. Oh, Todd, why must you always save my favorite for last? Jenna Mae offers me a final clap. Her solitary pair of hands echo through the sterile environment, a cold reminder I suck. Her fellow patients don't have the grace to humor the poor woman. I offer the gawking crowd a sour smile. It wouldn't offend me if their displeasure was aimed at me. I'm a performer. I'm used to it. But to look down on the sweetest soul in the whole room is surely a crime punishable by the good Lord himself. I'm glad someone appreciates my art, Jenna Mae. I pack up my worn guitar and take a seat next to her. "Oh, I do, but please write me a song." Jenna Mae's eyes scrunch in smitten delight. "Of course, I promise her every week, but I never follow through." "Todd, please say you will join me for lunch today." Teasingly, I mutter through a mental calendar so full I couldn't possibly oblige. In the end, I always let her win. In truth, it wouldn't be allowed anyway. The rules here are strict. The troubadours are not allowed to fraternize with the patients. Jenna Mae seems to forget this on a weekly basis. Honestly, our friendship is nothing but harmless play. Jenna Mae is 80 some odd years old, and I'm 25, I think. It's been so long. I haven't given it much thought. Since the accident, my life has been slipping away piece by piece. Needless to say, my Westphalia, a home, and a tour bus is long gone. It is a charred wreck at the bottom of a remote stretch of coastal highway. Somehow, I escaped with my life, an old blaze here. The dang guitar just won't die. I've played hundreds of guitars with a better sound, but Blaze is my voice. My 4 horsemen, each with their specialty instruments, have fallen away. No doubt they've moved on and are playing with the likes of Stone Temple or Nirvana. And there was Winter, the better of my half, the spirit in my song, and the love of my life. Winter had a voice like dark honey and hair like raven. Her presence on stage could freeze the crowd solid. I was out of place as her guitars. I was buck-toothed and average on my best days. I tried my best to cleverly style my thin flap of brown hair. I even grew out a sad excuse for a beard. I could never match winter's pale beauty, but she loved me anyway. She stood by me during my recovery, but only for a time. One day, she just stopped coming. Jenna May begins to cry. What's wrong? I take her hand in mine. She forces a smile, but her anguish does not cease. I'm not going to see you again. A steady wave of sobs draws the chagrin of her fellow consort growers. Cowboy Daniel, or Cowboy Donald, raises an eyebrow, but like any well-tempered musician, his show goes on. I scowl at the insensitive looks from her fellow patients. Can they not see this woman is beside herself? I give Jenna May a warm squeeze on the shoulder. Why would you think that? You know I'll be back next Thursday. I'll even play your favorite song first so you don't have to suffer through my whole set. A girlish giggle disrupts her crying for a single moment, but her sorrow returns. It's no use. The woman is simply inconsolable. This is your last Thursday, she sobs. A pang of betrayal sets in. I've been coming every Thursday for years. I never claimed to be a great musician, but I'm not terrible. It's always been Todd Callan, followed by Cowboy Fry. How dare they break it off with me in such a cold way? Well, what do you mean by that? My voice cracks with hoarse tones. Miss Crawford, you need to take your medicine. A nurse barges into our conversation. Her intrusion is rude, but I've been here and I've done that. I won't begrudge her. She has nearly 30 others to deal with. Unlike a musician, she must administer her craft individually. Whether it be 10,000 or just Jenna May Crawford, my duty is the same. I grin patiently as a buffet of red and tan pills are swallowed one by one. Would you be a dear and inform the kitchen to prepare a lunch for my friend Todd Callan? Jenna May frames her hands and plays up my non-existent renown. The nurse smiles through me as if I were not sitting here and she was simply admiring the handiwork of the chair. For once, I wish they would humor the woman. Apparently, they wish me gone after today. What's that, Todd? I understand. The nurse leans in as if I'm telling her a secret. I shrink away. She's so close, I can taste her ear. I'm sorry, Mrs. Jenna. Mr. Callan is a busy man. He simply can't join you for lunch. Jenna May looks at me in confusion. I throw up my hands. What the hell is this nurse playing at? At least the others are vaguely dismissive about my company. There's no need for this mockery. Whoever they send to fire me will get an earful about this nurse. Jenna May calms down and places a skeletal array of fingers over mine. Her hands are soft and gentler than they look. She sniffs out a final sob and gives me a determined pat. It's for the best. You're free now, she says. I've always been free. I love coming here. I enjoy your company, I really do. She shushes me sternly. Oh, Todd, you're such a silly young man. Clinging to this life is so tiresome. Eventually, we will all need to let go. I tilt away in confusion. Does she think she's dying? Or is she planning on harming herself? Nurse, I shout, but no one comes. No, Todd, it's you. Jenna May looks towards the atrium. I trace her gaze. A raven-haired beauty awaits. Her left lip curls into a familiar, devilish grin. She's a transcendent of age and reality. In that moment, decades of frozen memories thaw for the first time. I give Jenna May's hand a soft squeeze and leave my guitar behind.
Well, thank you. That was a pretty deep and emotional piece. Thank you for sharing that. Is this fiction or nonfiction?
This is definitely a fiction.
This is definitely fiction. Okay. Well, you know, sometimes we take something very personal and we just tweak it a little bit as.
Well, it's based on I used to work in a nursing home. I was a shuttle driver, so I take people to and from appointments at the veterans home.
Yeah.
So I've learned to accept the line between life and death, and life and near death, and near death and death. It's kind of like a daily line in a nursing home. So I kind of use that as a base for the story.
Well, I think it's great for people to who are watching this to hear about kind of what inspires you. So with this story, that's something that inspired you. And you've written other fictional pieces. Do you have like a favorite genre that you like to write in?
Well, the first writing I did was a fantasy novel, um, but it's in various stages of being edited at this moment.
Mhm.
I'm working on a modern fiction, so it's just everyday modern. I think if you were to actually pinpoint the time, it's in like the 90s, maybe late 90s.
Do you enjoy
Like a short story.
the short story versus the long story? You know, writing a novel. Is there a preference for you?
Um, to be honest, I really enjoy writing short stories because you can write a lot of them and you get to start new, and it's like drawing like a quick picture, as opposed to having this huge canvas and
Yeah.
everything on it.
Yeah. As
But
somebody
I
who
found that
I haven't written a novel, and I don't aspire to write a novel, and it's because of that. I like to condense my idea into a poem or into a short story or a short piece. So I can relate to that for sure. When do you think you started even thinking of yourself as a writer?
well, I've always been a reader, and I've always kind of procrastinated, writing. But it was only last year, probably the summer of last year, is when I started getting into. That's when I picked up my book, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and I just started going. It was a year ago. Yeah.
And I hope people hear that, because sometimes people who are, dabbling in writing or thinking about it, they think, well, I should have started this when I was 10 or 20 or 30, or, they could be 80 now and they're just starting to do writing. And it's like, it's important for people to know you can pick up that pen anytime and just start with something, and don't think about the, the whole process of, oh, is it going to be in the right format? Is my grammar correct? I don't spell well. How do you feel about all those kind of technical parts of writing when you sit down to write?
Well, what I've learned is you learn them as you go, and to me, that's the best way to do it. Like what I did was, I was like, you know what? I know it's not going to be good. I know I'm going to end up changing a lot of it, and I did. And even now, I'm still changing. Like the last writers group, I learned that I'm doing my dialogue wrong, so I've been changing my dialogue. But you learn as you go, and I think it's good to do that. It's good to learn as you go, because you should never feel like you're done learning to be an author. You should always try to tighten up your craft, whatever. Just pick a project here or there, and then tighten it up. But when I started, I just went on. I use WordPad because I don't have Microsoft Word on my computer, and I just started. I think that's the best advice I can give anybody, is just get started and don't get discouraged, because you will erase your first thing that you write. I guarantee you, because I did. I thought I was going to keep it forever, and I ended up like, oh, this is not good. So
yeah, there's a lot of editing.
that's the first step, is doing it. Yeah. First step is definitely doing it. Just going ahead and not worrying about what anyone thinks.
Do you prefer to handwrite and then put in the computer, or put in the computer right away?
Generally when I write, I just do it right on the computer, because what I do is I'm focused myself on it, where I'm not, I'm not one of those writers like, oh, I got an idea, and then I'll, write it down quickly. Like I kind of like get into the writing mindset, and I just sit down and I just tune everything out. The only other thing I would have on is maybe music.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I kind of just put it straight.
You kind of give yourself a block of time to say, you know what, I have a half an hour, I'm going to sit down, I'm really going to focus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And some people, I have about 100 notebooks around where I'll scratch ideas in and start something, and then, so everybody has a different process, and they're just different. There's no one way to go about it other than to jump in. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like people to know about you or your writing process?
I'm not a plotter at all. And half the time, even when I write a short story, I don't know exactly how it's gonna end, and then I'll end up going back and changing things so that, well, like, oh, I actually like how this ends better. Like even that story I just read, it was going to probably be another 500 words long because I wanted to introduce some other elements, but I was like, you know what, I don't really need to, because the story is kind of complete here. And I think I've discovered that through just you can, like, if you're like me, like, some people, like I've watched other people doing our book critiques and
Yeah.
things like that, where everybody has different process, and like it's I think as a writer you kind of have to know your process and then refine your process. So there's not one correct way to do it. It does help to watch what other people do, because I have picked up stuff that other people do.
Yes.
um
Yep.
so but in essence, as a writer, you need to come up with your own process, and everybody needs to do that. And it's not wrong, and there's no wrong or right way to do it. It's the way I see it. It's just you gotta refine your process, and you should always be refining your process. It makes you a better writer.
Do you have any favorite part of the process for you, whether it's the idea or the editing or the typing it or the reading it? Is there a publishing it? Any part of that that's kind of a favorite for you?
I like the initial writing of it. I like just that raw, like it comes down, it's imperfect, but I like when the story unfolds and it's raw, because when you go back, it gives you something to do where you're like, okay, I know what I was trying to do here, but it's not the best way it can be written. And then you go back and you do that. But I actually like when it comes out raw, because that's the first thought in that story. Or because I don't do poetry or anything like that. I only do like short stories and fictions.
Well, I want to thank you, Johnson, for coming out and sharing your piece and talking story with me. And I want people to know that if they want to know more about the Hawaii Writers Guild, you can go to the website at hawaiiwritersguild.com. And there's also a Facebook page for Hawaii Writers Guild. So until next time, aloha, everyone.
Cool.